always be in the process of building meaningful and authentic relationships because they matter.
Welcome to Agency for Change, a podcast from KidGlov that brings you the stories of changemakers who are actively working to improve our communities. In every episode, we'll meet with people who are making a lasting impact in the places we call home.
It started out as an organization dedicated to providing a safe alternative for boys who were roaming the streets of Hartford, Connecticut. And today, 162 years later, Boys and Girls Clubs of America serves all young people, helping them reach their potential and find success within their doors. With locations all over the United States, these clubs offer a second home to kids who need it, with a focus on academic success, good character and citizenship, and healthy lifestyles. Hello, everyone. This is Lynn Weinman, President and Chief Strategist at KidGlov. Welcome to another episode of the Agency for Change podcast. Today, we're joined by Kimberly Goins, Executive Director of Boys and Girls Clubs of Lancaster County, which is empowering youth to reach their full potential. Kim, I am eager to talk with you today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks for having me. I look forward to our time together and, more importantly, getting an opportunity to connect with your audience.
Thanks, Kim. We've already had a few laughs before we hit record, but I can tell this is going to be a really fun conversation. And just for those who may not know what Boys and Girls Clubs of Lancaster County does, could you fill us in a bit?
Absolutely, Lynn. At its core, the Boys and Girls Club is first and foremost a safe place to go for youth. We are a community organization that provides before and after school programming at 2 site locations. And within that, we also provide high impact, high return programming that really centers around workforce development outcomes, along with youth leadership development, internships, and healthy lifestyles.
Kim, those are all really great and really important questions. But before we dive deeper into Boys and Girls Clubs and get too far into the interview, we've had a chance to talk with your husband, Tony Goins, on the podcast before. So it's great to get a chance to talk with you. And before you came on the show, you said one unique thing about you is you are a serious crafter, not just a crafter, but a serious crafter. What do you like to create, and how did you become interested in this?
So I like to create a lot of things. And if you come to my home, Lynn, if you can imagine it, you really can create it in my home. I have a whole entire room dedicated to crafting. I'm going to tell you what I enjoy, but let me tell you how I got there. So in a previous position, I had a very challenging day with a youth who had really been violated. And my backstory, and we'll get into more of my background here in a moment, but I'm actually not a case manager, right? I've spent my years in fundraising, which means I'm not necessarily equipped to handle some of those really emotionally charged conversations. And so a lot of my friends run when they're having tough days. And so, full disclosure, I've never ran.
Me neither.
I'm not necessarily coordinated. And just a little tidbit, if you see me running, run.
Something's chasing you, huh?
Something is chasing me. And so with this day, I make the decision that I am going to run out this frustration. And so I leave my phone at home. I put on the one pair of yoga pants and the one pair of tennis shoes that I owned at the time, and I take off. Well, I probably get, I kid you not, a quarter mile into it. And I should also mention I'm running and crying like the ugly cry because it was such a tough day.
Yeah.
And about a quarter mile into my run, I stopped and I said, this is dumb. Who runs? I don't like running. And I didn't have a phone to have someone come pick me up. And I was sharing that with someone. They said, well, hey, I craft. And I have this tool called a Cricut. I had never heard of it, but I went to Michael's the next day, bought one, and some little old ladies threw me a quote unquote Cricut shower and bought me a lot of crafting supplies, and the
Wow.
rest is history. But
Wow.
yes, yes. And so the one thing though, Lynn, that I really enjoy making, not just for my family members, but for my friends, is I do have a wood cutting laser machine.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yes, and so when a loved one is no longer with family members, if they want to
Mm.
memorialize their handwriting, so whether it's a recipe for a cutting board or just a really great saying, I can take the literal handwriting and have it engraved into a piece of wood for a memento. It's long lasting, that can be handed down. It's one of the favorite things that I get a chance to do.
You know, people can't see me because we're just recording a podcast, but my jaw is on the floor. That is such a great thing to do. So, so neat, Kim. I got to agree, though. I think crafting sounds 100 times better than running for sure. So,
Yeah.
so just along that path, you mentioned you're not a caseworker, and I do. My heart goes out to caseworkers and people who are in the field because it takes a special skill set, special training. But so I'm curious, what brought you to Boys and Girls Club and what brought you to Nebraska in general? That's a big question, but how would you describe that journey?
Yeah, for sure. So, one, I've spent my entire career in the nonprofit sector.
Mm.
So, I've probably done, I kid you not, every single job. I have worked with the clients directly in youth programming. I have fixed commercial toilets by watching
Wow.
YouTube videos. I have raised money. I have done administrative work. And so it's where I've spent my career since my early 20s. And I have a passion for helping support those in need. And I really love serving. My journey here to Nebraska is a very simple one. Like a lot of friends that I've met along the way, my husband took a job here.
Yep.
And he I'm sure he shared with your audience previously, he was working at JP Morgan Chase.
Yeah.
He had really big operations in India and Mexico, few other places co-located between Dallas, where we were living, and in New York. And we kind of get down to one kid in our home out of the four. And I think he really wanted to slow down quite a bit.
Mm.
He receives a call from a headhunter who gives him an opportunity to come to Nebraska. Now, I think it's important for me to say to your audience. So first, I say, where's Nebraska?
Yeah. He mentioned, I think, that he was afraid to tell you.
Yeah, where you want to do what? And so I said, well, I don't know about this. And we had our youngest one was getting ready to go into her freshman year. And she's like, what do they wear there? What do they drive? Because in her head, it was a lot of horse and buggies and burlap sacks for
Yes.
clothes. And so I drop him off at the airport for his interview. He kisses my forehead and he says this. He says, babe, it is just the courtesy. And I said, so you're not moving me to Nebraska? He said, absolutely not. And this man gets here. 2 days later, he calls me and he says, I need you to book a flight. Get here now. Something special is happening in Nebraska.
Oh.
And I said, oh my God, what? And I will tell you, he was not kidding, Lynn. I had an opportunity to fly right out. When you meet the kindness of the people here, the quality of living here, whereas I really thought we'd spend here a year. We've been here now since 2014, and this is home for us. So we
Wow.
absolutely love living here. And so Nebraska is home. And then specifically my journey to the Boys and Girls Club, I've had an opportunity to work with a couple of other nonprofits in the community. I received a phone call from a local community leader here who was one of the initial founders of the Boys and Girls Club. And she said, you know, we have these really big dreams. This organization is really right for the next steps. Would you consider coming and joining us? And it was a really easy decision to make when you see the quality of the board, the programming, and the overall Boys and Girls Club movement. It was a very easy decision to make to come join this team.
That just sounds great, Kim. I have to say, Nebraska is lucky to have you and Tony. You are great ambassadors for the state. And Boys and Girls Club, also very lucky to have you on the team. Some things that you've mentioned, I think that there's often a misperception that a nonprofit job is going to be an easy job, right? But
Yes.
you have had to wear a lot of hats. So I also, we like to try and give our guests on the show an opportunity to dispel any misconceptions about what a particular organization does or assumptions about who they serve, because sometimes an organization that's been around as long as Boys and Girls Clubs, people kind of have an impression, but it may not be up to date. Is there anything you'd like to dispel or anything that's kind of incorrect in the public mind right now?
For sure. I think there are two things that are quite often I find is a misconception with the Boys and Girls Club. One, because we are located on school property, on LPS property, oftentimes people think we only serve the kids in those schools, and that's not true. We do serve those youth, but we also have a wider range of programming to really support the entire community. And for us, we do that through our food pantries. We have 4 currently. We have 2 additional ones built. So we are serving the community through our community food pantries, and especially in areas where you have some of the food desert happening, right? So we want to be able to fill that gap. And I think the biggest misconception about our organization is that we only serve the poor kids or the bad kids or the kids that no one else wants. And I will tell you this, are some of our kids living in poverty situations? Yes. But you know what? I think people need to know about our kids, that they are resilient and they are problem solvers, and they build their strength by really overcoming challenges, not by acquiescing to those challenges. I think it's important for people to know we never define people by their worst moments. And so we don't use the term poor. I don't even put it in our grants, right?
Yeah.
That's the condition of the community, not the condition of our young people that we're serving. They just need some specific support to step into their potential. We really focus on helping overcome some of those systemic barriers while addressing their personal challenges. And we're proud of the work that we do here.
Kim, that's amazing. I can hear the passion in your voice. And I think, the kids are lucky to have you on their side. I think that is fantastic. As I was preparing for today, I was looking at your website, and one of the things that's listed under your vision is not to duplicate services and programs, but to provide a tighter safety net for children and youth. And I'm curious, why is that such an important part of your organization? And how do you set yourself apart from other organizations that serve youth?
For sure. I think what's really important for your listeners to know is really the real scope of the Boys and Girls Club. So whereas we have the 2 locations here in Lincoln, Nebraska, you have Omaha that's right up the road from us that's serving with, I believe, over 14 sites. In the entire Boys and Girls Club movement, you have over 4,400 clubs.
Wow.
You have over 11,000 sites, and you actually have 450,000 youth each and every day who walk through some Boys and Girls Club across this country, including on tribal land, as well as on military sites, right? So we have this really far and wide reaching way to make an impact. When I get that down here on a very local level, I think what's important to know about our organization, and that I think that really sets us apart from other youth development organizations, get this, who are doing phenomenal work. So keep supporting them, because all rising tides lift all boats.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing is this, is whereas a lot of organizations, including us, really keep our pulse on the social needs of the kids, right? So food, clothing, housing, their education. I mean, that's really important. That has to be addressed. But when you look at our programming and the way that we deliver results, it is really, we have a priority on the youth workforce. In any given day in this state, you have about 50,000 plus jobs that are going unfilled. We have a highly underskilled workforce in this state. And when you look at the lowest unemployment that's ever been on record, is happening right now.
Yeah.
We even have companies who are looking outside of this state for talent to fill those jobs. And what we're saying is this: we're going to always keep our finger on the social pulse and the needs that need to be fulfilled. However, we're also providing and prioritizing their economic futures. And so specifically what that looks like, Lynn, is how are we reassuring, or specifically what that looks like for us, Lynn, is how are we assuring that in the future, they actually don't need housing provided, they don't need food provided, they don't need clothes provided. And we're doing that through a workforce development framework. So all of our program is centered around three verticals, which are technology. So consider that whole STEM, with a real priority on technology and kind of an offshoot of gaming. And I'm happy to talk about that some more. Entrepreneurship and job skills and career readiness, right? So for a kid who doesn't have a plan to go to your traditional 4-year, even 2-year college, then how do we make sure that they have the skills to go directly to work? And then we underpin those three verticals with three things: Gallup strengths. So 100% of our staff, our club members, and their families have access and take the Gallup Strengths Finders. We also provide leadership development. And I don't mean your traditional out of the box buzzword. And right before the pandemic, another board member and we interviewed around 50 CEOs here locally. And we said, what are some of the challenges you're having with your current workforce, and especially some of your younger workforce members that are entering the market? And then what are you seeing 10 years down the road when you kind of look around the corner? And so we really just dropped those notes we took to the university. Some really smart people kicked us out, some proprietary curriculum to really also now address some of those soft skill needs. So for example, what does workforce place gossip look like? Right? How do you teach that in a way so that a young person can identify it? Most importantly, pivot away from it while keeping the relationship intact so that they can really start growing their careers. And then lastly, it's underpinned by a healthy lifestyle. So not necessarily, but including what you put in your body, but also how do you delay some of those risky behaviors? Drugs, alcohol, premarital sex, etc., so that you can delay those risky behaviors so you can really lean in and become whatever it is that your heart desires while keeping them in this community.
Wow. All of that you just said is so amazing. And what I really love about it is you're focusing on the kids today. Like, what do they need today? Because you got to think about, the food, clothing, school. You got to do that first, but then you're looking at their futures and the future of the community. I just think that is all amazing. I didn't realize, Kim, that Boys and Girls Clubs did all of that. So I'm really, really glad that you shared it. I am curious, after hearing all of that great information, you're doing very impactful work, which is one of my favorite things. Are there any kids who have come through your doors that you feel like you've made a particularly big impact on?
We have a young girl, and this actually happened just last week. And like most organizations, especially in the nonprofit, this becomes work. And sometimes you have to take a giant step back to see and really understand how you're changing lives here. And so a young lady who was being moved to her 9th foster home in the last couple of years, her 9th one, entered our program. And as you can imagine, this young lady was very shy, very reserved, had really made herself small as to not be seen or heard, because she found that if she did those things, then she could stay in homes a little bit longer, right? And because we don't turn any student away because of the inability to pay an IEP, etc., if there's a youth in need, and that's all youth, right, could benefit from our programming, we accept them in. Well, this young lady found out last week that she was going to be moved to another home. And she came up to our program director and said, if you could help me, if you could help me, because I finally made friends because of the programming at BGC, right? It started
Yeah.
building her confidence. She
Yeah.
started seeing people who look like her every day, because we are proud that we are in some of the diverse schools in the city. And I'm proud to say that our staff reflects the population that we
Oh,
serve, right? And so she
that's
was able to make some,
fantastic.
yes. So she was able to make some really deep connections. And she wanted to go to prom, and she had worked and she had saved money, and she's about to be taken from this home. Well, our VP of programs jumped right into action. She was able to make some connections with our community partners, because all we do is youth development. We actually don't do the other wraparound services. We are just very strategic in partnering to make
Yeah.
sure we're taking care of the whole child. And so we were able to put in a real plan to keep this young lady here and intact with friends and families that she
Oh,
knows. Now, is it temporary? Yes, but she's also a senior.
yeah.
And we're working now, even at the state level, to ensure that there's a more of a plan for when she does graduate. Because as you know, Lynn, with the work that you do, so
Right.
many of these young people, they age out of the system, they don't have a plan, and we're maniacal about making sure that they do.
Oh, that's fantastic. Right. They need a support system. That just honestly gives me chills and goosebumps, Kim. That's a great story, and I'm glad you shared it. I am curious too, because I think you started this job right before the pandemic.
Yes.
And how did the pandemic affect boys and girls clubs? Because I'm sure it must have. How did it impact your ability to help the community? And what was that experience like as a new leader of the organization?
For sure, for sure. So, Lynn, I did. I started this position in October of 2019.
Oh.
Then I spent most of November in Germany. Then you come back, it's Christmas. So I really started in January and run smack dab into the
Oh,
pandemic in late February, early March of 2020. And like so many organizations, we had to pivot early. And
yeah.
I think we were impacted a lot of different ways, both positively and negatively. I think it's really important, though, to start off when you have a dynamic board and dynamic leadership the way that the Boys and Girls Club does. It was really easy for
Mm,
us to make some decisions quickly.
that's
So, for
good.
example, our finance committee, we met every single Friday for 30 minutes for months.
Mm,
And that's the community giving of their time. And they have their own jobs, right? That are
right.
also kind of falling apart,
Right.
but they're committed to the work. And so this was not a singular effort. This was the board coming together, really galvanizing our team internally to say our community is in need. As you know, for the first time ever, you had individuals who had never asked for help
Mm,
for the first time were having to
yeah.
ask. And so, how do you do it with dignity? And that's what we focused on. And so our doors at our school sites closed when LPS closed.
Right.
And this is what's unique. This is the gift of the Lincoln community. Churches started opening their doors to us
Ah,
for us to be able
wow.
to deliver programs. We were able to build capacity for some of our first responders who needed support right then. Lynn, we also provided 2,000 dinner meals a week for
Oh my
several weeks.
goodness.
And we didn't care if you had a youth, we didn't care if you had a kid that didn't go to our school. Full disclosure, you could have driven in from one of the smaller towns. If you were hungry, we fed you.
Oh, that's
And
just great.
yes. And if you go to our Facebook, even, there's not a lot of photos about that, because this is what we said. We were here to do the right thing. This was not
Yeah.
our opportunity for photo ops. It was the time for us to roll up our sleeves, lace up our boots, and be feet on the ground to support this
I
community in a
appreciate that.
crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there are no pictures of us handing out the sacks, even though we did it for, again, thousands of them each
Yeah.
week. There are no pictures of the families in their cars. It was the community coming together and serving. And so that's what we were able to do, is just really galvanize the community. Within that, though, right, we learned some things about ourselves.
Yeah.
And the first thing we learned, which was pretty good for me as the leader of this organization, was the community perception of us. It was when I discovered that the community really didn't see us as a community-based organization. So
Wow.
it helped us understand how we needed to engage with our marketing. What information were we sharing? Because you can get so busy with doing the work and not telling the
Yes.
story.
Yes,
And
that
so
happens all the time, right? It happens all the time. But telling the story really connects you to the community and connects you to donors and connects you to grant makers and even connects you with volunteers and those who need your services. So I'm glad you're telling the story.
that's right. Yes. So we were able to hire for the first time ever our director of marketing, who
Oh,
has really
great.
closed that gap for us to tell the story. And so we also learned how to better streamline our programming, right? Because what we knew is that once we knew that
Yeah.
the pandemic was going to be more than 2 weeks.
Yes, that's right. Funny that we thought it was going to be 2 weeks at one
Yes,
point.
I
Yeah.
spoke those words out loud. I said,
Me
it's 2 weeks
too.
and then it's over. Well, once we realized that it was going to be more than 2 weeks, Lynn, it really helped us firm up alongside of our board just a long-term strategy. So when you started looking at workforce development, work from home, right?
Yeah.
What are the needs that are happening when you think of internet access,
Mm,
access to technology, even a space for a youth to be able to do their homework in a
right.
home, right? That may have multiple young people there. We also found that you may have a high schooler who was then watching we had one young person in our programs watching 13 kids each day.
Whoa.
Yeah, because the other family members were working, they didn't have
Yeah.
childcare. And
Uh,
so they're dropping them off there. And so we were able to create programs that we could deliver in real time so that the high schooler themselves wasn't having the learning loss. But then we could also support some of those young people in the home who were not necessarily registered Boys and Girls Club members. So again, it's really about taking care of that entire household so that they can really thrive. Because Lynn, the way I think about our work is this is generational work.
mm,
This is legacy. We do not have an option to fail. Will we drop some balls in our day-to-day work? Absolutely. But if we fail, it is generational impact we
yeah.
have. And again, we have this goal of ensuring that families can take care of themselves. Because when I see that number, that 50% of our kids right now in LPS are in poverty, 50%, the report
That's
came out.
just such a sad number. It's just
Yes,
for such a great community.
that's right.
We got to work on that.
We do. And that's what we're doing. And that's what we're doing. So when we talk
Yeah.
about playing the long game, whereas again, they may need the housing support now, the food support now, what we're saying, if you send your kid to me, if you send them over to the Boys and Girls Club, we will help skill build your young person and get them connected to jobs in this community so that they want to stay here. But more importantly, now they have access to health care, to a quality wage, so they can take their kids, their families on a vacation. It increases their quality of life in our community. It decreases even mental health and things that look like social issues or sometimes, and get this most often, really just economic issues.
Mm,
If you can solve this issue over here, we can start solving some of these social issues. We want to make
wow.
sure that our young people are getting to work and meaningful work that pays them well.
Yeah. Wow. And you mentioned there's no option to fail, but yet I think about the excitement of succeeding, right? And I
Yes.
think about the potential of every kid that comes to Boys and Girls Clubs. And I think that's amazing. So, Kim, I understand the organization hit a milestone this year. Could you
Yes.
tell me more about that?
I am so excited. As a matter of fact, Lynn, this is the first time I've announced this out loud.
Ah,
We
yay! Here we
turned
go.
15 this year.
Whoa,
15.
15. You're an adolescent almost
We
with the ability to drive.
we are. I mean, just think about the day you woke up from 14 and you turned
Oh,
15.
that was way too long ago to remember.
It was a great time because you started thinking, I get to drive in
Oh,
another year. I
yeah.
get to stay out later. So we are excited to announce this is our
Oh,
15-year anniversary.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, 15 years of serving this incredible community, 15 years of partnering with amazing organizations like Duncan Aviation, like TMCO, like the university to make all of
Yeah.
these great things happen. So thank you so much for asking about it. It's a very exciting milestone for us.
You have some great partners in there too. So the organization is turning 15. Thank you for
Yes,
announcing that here. What do you see for the next 15 years? What do you think is different? What do you think is the same? How
for
will the
sure.
organization operate?
Yeah, so currently we have two locations. I think we will start in the next 15 years. I have no doubt we'll have some type of presence in every single LPS school
Mm,
who needs some support, and not only in Lincoln, but we're also serving Lancaster County. So we've
yeah,
even started now putting some programming in place to go outside even the city of Lincoln.
that's great.
We will be the leader for youth development, specifically in the workforce space,
Mm,
right? We will be leading that conversation. We will be ensuring that young people here are connected with internships. And I think we'll be able to really measure, Lynn, just the growth that our young people are having. And the way we're going to measure that is if that number is 50% now of kids in poverty, how are we making sure that those families don't continue those cycles of poverty?
yeah.
And that's what we're here to measure. We believe in the next 15 years, we will be leading that conversation.
Oh, that all sounds great. I have a suggestion for you too. I think you
Okay,
need to add an advertising program. We need some copywriters and graphic designers and web
let's do
developers
it.
out there. So all
Let's
right.
let's do it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Kim, it is so inspirational to talk to you. And everybody who listens to the podcast knows I have one favorite question that I ask every guest, and that is that I would love a Kim Goins original motivational quote to share with our listeners. What do you have for us
Oh
today?
goodness. So the first thing that comes to mind for me, Lynn, is to always be in the process of building meaningful and authentic relationships because they matter.
Mm,
Because they matter. But it has to be meaningful, as you know, and it has to be authentic. And I would definitely say give first.
yeah.
Give first. Yes.
Oh, that's great. Both of those are great. You gave us double, you gave us bonus, two quotes. I'm just gonna say when your husband Tony Goins was on, he only gave us one. So you have
Well,
both.
I always say he works hard, I work smart. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, Kim, for our listeners today who would really like to learn more about your work, how can they find out more about Boys and Girls Clubs of Lincoln, Lancaster County?
sure. Well, we are always looking for the community to get involved, and they can get involved in several ways as a volunteer, as a donor, as a mentor. And full disclosure, my number is public, my email is public.
Oh,
Even if you see something, an industry coming in this community, if you look at our program on our website that we don't have, I want to have those conversations just like this copyright conversation, right? Like
yes.
how do we implement that? But really, Lynn, your audience can go to our website. It's
Okay.
www.lincolnbgc for Boys Girls Club,
Great.
lincolnbgc.org. Please follow us on Facebook. We have lots of updates, great pictures of these cute faces. Our outcomes are there. And that's just Lincoln Boys and Girls Club. And you
Okay.
can also follow us on Instagram. And it's the same, it's the Boys and Girls Club of Lincoln there as well.
Fantastic. We'll get all of those links in our show notes as well for
Perfect.
anybody who didn't catch it. So as we wrap up our time together today, what is the most important thing you would like our listeners to remember about the work that you're doing, Kim?
Yeah, the most important thing is this. I'd like for the members, your listeners, to first just kind of look inward and think about what they want their legacy to be, right? Because if you do that, what I really want them to remember about our work is, one, how they got involved. So please get involved with the Boys and Girls Club. And again, there are many ways to do it. And if there's something we're not doing, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. And I think it's important for them to know that we really are working hard to work ourselves out of a job.
Yeah.
I would love the day that we can shutter this business, because collectively, we've come together to take care of our own first. Yeah. And right here in this community, support this community, support workforce development in this community. If not through the Boys and Girls Club, there are so many thriving and worthy nonprofits in Lincoln, Nebraska specifically. Support them. In Greater Lincoln, support the nonprofits. And most importantly, I want them to remember that we are really changing generational lives. Yeah. We are making sure that the kids now, that their grandkids will be better off than their start was.
Kim, that is just beautiful. And as we wrap up today, I just have to say, I really believe the world needs more people like you, more organizations like the Boys and Girls Clubs. And thank you for taking time to talk with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
We hope you enjoyed today's Agency for Change podcast. To hear all our interviews with those who are making a positive change in our communities, or to nominate a changemaker you'd love to hear from, visit KidGlov.com at KIDGLOV.com to get in touch. As always, if you like what you've heard today, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.